Rosenhan experiment. According to the World Health Organization, 1 in 4 people will suffer from some form of mental or neurological disorder in their lifetime. Unfortunately, we're still some way off from reaching an acceptable level of understanding or treatment for those who suffer from mental illness, but some people are pushing hard to help us progress. One such person was the psychologist David Rosenhan, because in the 1970s, when he wanted to test the reliability of psychiatric diagnosis, he went so far as to have himself committed to a mental institution. The psychiatric hospital he attended had no idea of his work or intentions, and while getting himself committed proved easy, he found it much harder to secure his release, as this quote given to the BBC so clearly shows. "I told friends, I told my family, I can get out when I get out. That's all. I'll be there for a couple of days and I'll get out." Nobody knew I'd be there for 2 months. The only way out was to point out that they, the psychiatrists, were correct. They had said I was insane. I am insane, but I am getting better. That was an affirmation of their view of me. Rosenhan was joined in this experiment by 3 women and 4 other men, all of whom were mentally fit. Each patient pretended to have experienced an identical set of symptoms, including hallucinations, to gain admittance to 12 psychiatric hospitals across 5 different US states. But after they were accepted, they proceeded to act as their normal selves. Despite this, every single patient was made to admit to having a mental illness during their stay. And they were forced to take antipsychotic drugs, even after telling the staff that their hallucinations had disappeared. On average, each patient spent 19 days in their respective institutions, and all except 1 was diagnosed with schizophrenia in remission before being released. Incredibly, it was the patients of these hospitals who noticed the ruse, not the staff, as while many of the genuine patients suspected these newcomers of being journalists or researchers. The medical staff, on the other hand, interpreted their normal behavior, such as note writing or simply chatting, as symptoms of mental disease. The scary part of this experiment is that each researcher had to achieve release by having themselves discharged by the hospital. There was a lawyer on hand in case anyone was forced to stay for a ridiculous length of time, but thankfully this option was never needed. However, things could have gone terribly wrong if the fake patients hadn't been able to flush their antipsychotic medications down the toilet, as these drugs can alleviate small problems. In an otherwise healthy brain, fake patients could have developed genuine symptoms of mental illness. When all the patients had been released, the study concluded that psychiatric institutions massively dehumanize their patients, so much so that even trained professionals can fail to spot the difference between healthy and unwell minds. This research prompted a shift away from mental health labels towards a culture of treating specific problems and behaviors, although this only came after David Rosenhan had dealt with the inevitable backlash. Many psychiatric experts defended the institutions, saying that most diagnoses are made based on a patient's self-reported experiences. So, Rosenhan agreed to send more fake patients to test the facilities of a local teaching hospital, whose staff claimed that they would be able to spot an imposter with ease. The hospital took in 193 new patients during the period in question, and out of these, they flagged 41 as faking it, with 42 more considered suspicious. So, how many did David Rosenhan send? 0. Not a single one. Every single patient was genuine, and this led to the hospital's admittance numbers to plummet in the months afterwards, as they realized they'd been diagnosing too many people as ill, when in reality, they were absolutely fine. This shocking expose helped to reform America's mental health services, but its purpose was not to undermine those who worked within it. Instead, this bold experiment helped to partially remove the stigma of those with mental illness. And although we've got a way to go before we truly understand how to treat and interact with such people, the risk David Rosenhan took means today we're just a little bit closer. Although, considering all the mean things people said about Kanye when he was committed, you'd be forgiven for believing otherwise.